Did I do one, Linda? Tell me if you can see it, anybody.
Not a problem. We'll just wait in here for a second. Yep, I can see it. You may want to go full screen when you do the presentation. So we got I'm sorry.
I said I can't see it.
Oh, I can see it.
Hang on.
All right, so I'll do the introduction. So we're going to be doing a conversation. I think some of you got kind of the tail end of a really cool conversation there with Diana about some of the coordination and efforts that she's doing with Sierra, another one of our members in the romance space, and how they collaborate together to write collaboratively with under a certain theme and then group publish that as sort of a team in order to expand each other's brands and expand each other's reach. We're going to have another conversation today about Sue, Linda, and Sue about how they collaborated and how they worked together to, build a brand, find new readers, and fill a space. So have at it, Sue. However you guys want to talk. I appreciate it. We're recording this, and this will be on the YouTube page hopefully later today. So it's all you guys.
Okay. I don't know who's starting this. Being a really good collaboration, we were all crazy busy this week, so other than emails, we haven't really talked. So I don't know.
You get to start, Susan.
Pardon?
You are starting, and then I will talk for a couple minutes, and then I'll pass it on to Sue. So
awesome.
That's the plan.
Okay, so this was there's a lot of reasons to collaborate, and our Three Witches project was kind of a pandemic project. We wanted to do something that was fun and have a reason to get together. So we decided on urban fantasy because it was kind of a meeting point for our three types of writing. And then we thought, well, we'll come up with a general theme, which we tried different ones, and we came up with witches, mostly because none of us had written about witches particularly. Like, they might have been peripheral to what we did, but we weren't writing directly about witches. So how we decided to play, we got together mostly on Sue's deck with a heater in the midst of winter because we were trying not to kill ourselves with the pandemic. And we decided to do 3 separate books, novellas, and other than doing it's about witches, and urban fantasy, so it was modern times, we didn't make any more literary decisions. And it was pretty fun how they all worked together. One of the big things we did is what Linda's going to talk about, is before we ever started writing, we made a lot of decisions about how we were going to write, what kind of a group we had, what was the legal, what was the rules of play. So here it is. Okay, Linda, you're up. Oh no, this was mine. What do you want to do, Linda? Do you want to stick with this?
No, you go. You go do your whole presentation, and then I'll pitch in after that.
Okay, I have collaborated in a variety of ways. I have a long time collaboration with my friend Anne. We were roommates in college, so a long time. And we both have separate careers, and we've sort of come together periodically, mostly for fun. And we've done 7 books and a TV show together. And again, what we did on our play dates, how we got together, what we decided. Now, Anne and I did it differently in that we co-wrote the same book. And we did it a lot of different ways depending on the books. Sometimes we did individual characters, sometimes we did scenes, sometimes we did one person did most of the writing, one did most of the editing, and we adjusted depending on the situation. And one of the things that we decided, which was really important to us, was that our friendship was more important than the book. So everything we did with the idea that if we're really mad and we really don't like this, we're just going to back off because we are friends. One of the big things about collaboration that people don't usually realize is it is not less work. it's actually as much or more work than just writing on your own. But if it's a good match, it's a lot of fun. You've got somebody to talk to who's just as invested as you are. Typically, you have similar goals. You get a much broader range of ideas because you've got more than one head coming up with things, because all of you know when you're writing, you hit that block and you think, I have no idea. So having a couple of people to do it is helpful. So you reduce the isolation, you do expand your potential audience. That didn't happen too much with Anne and me because we were just the venue we were working in and the media. That happened a lot with Sue and Linda. So they'll talk about that. You share the expenses, which is kind of nice because things cost money, but you also divide the profits so you don't make as much as if you'd written it by yourself. So you got to be prepared for that too. Now, before you begin, do you guys want to talk about this part or should I just keep going?
Keep going.
Okay. These are really important when you're thinking about collaborating. It has to be somebody you trust, and you have to trust them intellectually. You have to trust the way they look at things. You have to trust that they will have your back. It has to be someone who meets deadlines. There's nothing quite so horrible, as I know some of you have experiences with that, as trying to work with someone who doesn't meet a deadline, and you put aside your personal life, or you do this, you do that, you stay up all night, you meet your deadline, and the other person is like, well, I think I'll have it done in a week or so, and then you want to leap through the computer or the phone and kill them. It has to be someone that you're willing to look foolish to, because you know how when you're writing, a lot of times you'll do something and it's the total wrong direction, and you look at it afterwards and you think, what was I thinking? When you're working with someone, they can often catch it before you do, but you look kind of dumb. So you have to kind of check your ego at the door. When Anne and I were doing the TV show, we had to come up with script rewrites really fast and a whole bunch of storylines for the series. The series never got off the ground, but we had to have them for the funding. And I remember we were trying to solve a problem with the script, and we were sitting on the steps outside the studio where they were shooting, and I kept saying, well, we should do this. And Anne would go, no. Well, we should do this. No, that won't work. And it was getting really frustrating. And then finally, with me suggesting all these things, she finally said, I know, we need to do this. And the joke became that my job was to be wrong so that she could figure out how to be right. And it's that give and take, but you have to be prepared to do that. And you have to be working with someone who's flexible so that you don't get backed up against a wall, and things can change if necessary. And it also has to be someone you're willing to spend time with. If they drive you crazy after half an hour, you do not want to work with them, because you're going to be spending hours and hours and hours with them. And those are all considerations. Okay, things to decide. Do you want to do this one, Linda, or should I? Because this is a lot of what we did with the witches.
Yeah, go for it, and I'll go into a little bit more detail.
Okay, money is a big thing when you're collaborating, because everybody thinks they're going to make $1 zillion, and a lot of times you don't, surprisingly enough. So you do have to agree what is joint expenses. That also means that one of you isn't going to go off and do a promotion without mentioning it, and then have the other person, and then expect the other person to pay for part of it. You also have to decide what you're going to do about unexpected or previously unplanned expenses. So that could be promotions, publishing costs, events, whatever. So what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to split it? Or are you going to discuss it? And who pays for what? I mean, there's been a couple of times where I was flush, so I paid for things, and a couple of times Anne was flush, so she paid for things. When and how will the profits be divided? Do you cash out monthly, quarterly, annually? Anne and I do a settling mid-January every year, and we actually invoice each other for services rendered and send money back and forth. sometimes it's kind of funny because the breakout is maybe $30, but you know. The other thing is, how much do you want to leave in your account to further build the business? Like, do you want to clean it out and start from scratch? Like, and then if you have to buy new books, who's going to pay for it or what you're going to do? Or is there a certain amount of money you're going to leave in the account so that you've got funding for what you need to do? Okay, Linda, do you want to jump in this part or what?
Whoops, sorry, microphone wasn't on. Pretty much we decided that we were going to split all the expenses. A lot of our early discussion was about how exactly are we going to divide up things and who's going to handle the money. And we explored a couple things, and we finally just decided that we were going to become an LLC, and that Three Witches Books was going to become an LLC as well as a publishing company, and that we were going to open up a bank account that all three of us have access to. We can all check the work, and if we have a desire, we can all deposit money in. I don't think anybody has ever taken any money out other than just writing checks or whatever, but it's pretty straightforward. We don't have a lot of huge expenses. But you know, what Susan said about trusting each other, that's pretty much it. I mean, because, you know, trust is fine when you say, yeah, I trust that you're going to make your deadline. But when you're splitting money with people, you really need to trust them. And so pretty much we haven't decided how we're going to cash out our copious profits, because it's all being rolled back into the next thing, into the next production. And I don't know when we will actually be in profit, or if we will ever be in profit. I went into this not expecting a huge amount of profit. I went into it expecting that what we get is what's going to pay for the next thing. And if that turns out to be better than that, well, then that's gravy. And that's about all I have to say about money, unless I'm forgetting something.
We have actually made
I just wanted to add that it's really important to work with people you trust, and I trust you guys completely. And so none of us will take advantage of the other person, you know, so it was easy for us to decide how to do this and to have an account that we all have access to, and knowing that we'll all be responsible. That's all.
Actually, Sue, you just haven't caught my embezzlement yet. With our vast fortunes.
I know, seriously.
Yeah.
Is that where your heater came from?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was a business expense, right?
Right.
Okay. Next. Okay, so the division of work. That is also something that should be decided ahead of time. The different ways that I've done it with Anne is one writes, one edits. We've written by character, because like in our kids' mysteries, it's the Amber and Elliot mysteries, so we have two girls. So sometimes she's written one and sometimes I've written the other. Sometimes we've done it by scenes and chapters, depending on who sees it most clearly and has time. Who's going to do the editing? How will the edits be worked on? And this is really, really important, because you can have quite a conflict between people who want or expect to revise extensively and people who write and basically do a line edit. They're perfectly good styles of writing, but they're different. And you need to know ahead of time if you're going to edit each other's work, which I recommend, like, because even the three of us have edited each other's things for consistency, even things like how you spell magic. But there has to be clarity of how much editing is happening. Are you going to get a developmental edit where they sit there and write copious notes about how to revise all your characters and your motivation and everything? Or is it going to be pretty much a line edit? Or is it going to be for consistency? It's really good to have that up front ahead of time, because people can get really angry about editing, as you all know. And if you're handing your work to somebody that is a partner, you want to know ahead of time what's likely going to happen, because that can turn into a huge sense of betrayal, and you really don't want that. Do you ladies want to throw anything else in this?
Got anything?
Okay.
I'm good.
I had a quick question, if you don't mind. Did you guys do any planning or organization regarding the stories that were going to be written? Did you provide guidance? Did you guys talk about the stories? Did you have a common theme that ran through them? Were they in the same world? How did you guys approach that? And if there's a slide coming up talking about that, you can just say, just wait.
There isn't really. Well, basically, we had a pretty lean decision. It was going to be urban fantasy. It was going to be in the modern times, and there was going to be witches. And that pretty much covered it. And we had a length. We said 15,000 to 25,000 words, because they were novellas and they were all going into one book. So did I leave anything out?
Yeah, actually, novellas go up to 39,000 words. So we just basically said novella length.
Mm-hmm. I don't write that long. If I write that much, that's a full-on tome. So, but we all ended up in the ballpark.
Okay, so maybe Susan, or if anybody else has done this, the thing that I've wondered about is that problem of writing with other people in a common world, and how you guys resolve style, characterization, and those type of things. I know, Susan, you've written with other people in kind of a collaborative environment. How, could you talk a little bit about that? Because writing, like kind of what we were talking about earlier with Sierra and Diana, they're writing their own story within a theme, but I'd be interested in actually somebody writing a common story within the same world and same characters.
If you're writing a common story, you have to do a lot of planning ahead of time. You have to understand how your characters view the world, because that is going to affect how everything happens. You pretty much have to work out the plot from one end to the other. You have to decide your developmental level, because like we were writing for kids, we decided it was for 9 to 12. So that makes a difference on what kind of language you use and how long the story is, how much description. If you're writing a longer piece, which we've also done, then even things like what would be offensive to a reader, what do we not care about. One of the jokes, which isn't a joke at all, I think I talk about it a little further as well, is what is the hill you're prepared to die on? Some things matter a huge amount to you individually, which nobody else might see, and those things have to be dealt with up front. One of the things that Anne and I frequently do is we will hit an impasse, and it really is an impasse, because one of us thinks it should go one way and one thinks it should go the other way. What we do is we hang up and say, let's try it again tomorrow, so that we have time to simmer down. Another thing we'll do is say, okay, I'm going to give you this one, but you owe me. And then the next time we have a conflict, the other person gets it. And they're typically over things like a word, or just a little bit of a scene or a tone. Getting the same tone in a piece of writing with both writers is really important, because when you're writing different scenes, like Anne and I go with the pen name of Stephanie Browning. And we've had a lot of discussions about Susan and Anne and who is Stephanie Browning, because it's almost like she's the third partner in this collaboration. And what is Stephanie Browning's voice? And our goal is so that afterwards, when we read it, we can't tell who wrote what, because we've smoothed it out enough. But that comes in pre-planning and a lot of talking. And that's why collaboration is never less work, because there is so much planning and talking. And nothing is one of the things I did not mention, but which I think is very important, is you have to have a comparable skill level. If you're a very experienced writer it's probably not a good idea to partner up with someone who is a new writer, because there's so much to learn in writing, and you never learn it all, obviously, but a very new writer is going to have different challenges than a writer who's more experienced, and you don't want anyone to become exasperated with the other person because of that. So you also have to have great respect for their writing. Like, you have to be able to sit back and say, yeah, they're a really good writer. So that when you're totally frustrated with the other person, you're not starting to think, wow, I'm pulling them along. Without me, they'd be nothing. You don't want any of that. So that's kind of an important thing as well. Did I even remotely answer your question, Matthew?
No, you
Okay.
did by saying it's hard.
Okay, can I add something to that? What I found working with you guys is as we wrote our novellas, we started to talk about ways we might be able to include each other's stories in our story. So in the third one I wrote for the third book, which book that's coming out, I've added some components from Susan Brown's work and from Linda Jordan's work in my story with my witches. And but I've okayed it with you guys, and of course you'll get a chance to edit it before it ever comes out, so you can change anything you don't think works with your character, involvement. So, but it's fun to be able to do that, and to have your work help inspire what I'm writing.
And it really is fun because, I mean, I've been looking at the things that the two of you do, and like the way you handle characters and situations and things like that. And I've tried to add some of that into what I've been doing. One of the challenges we had is, like Sue talked about, using our characters. Now, my character lives in New York and has a very different worldview because she is a witch and she's a green witch, and there's stuff about the netherworld and stuff like that. But I don't have any other fantasy elements. So when Sue was including my character in hers, she wanted to do something, but we had to talk about how to mesh their worldviews, because they're very different worldviews of the characters. And she came up with a great solution, and it'll work just fine. So that's where you're dividing work, but you're talking, and it does inspire each other, because this is where you get new ideas. Like, even though we're writing totally separate books with separate characters, you still start to get ideas of things that could happen and things you could do and ways of looking at things that you wouldn't when you're just reading somebody else's book.
Yeah, we sidestepped a lot of the issues that Matt was talking about by just deciding to do separate books and separate worlds, and that was not intentional. We just, as soon as we said, oh, let's do witches, each one of us you could see the faces around the table light up, and you knew everybody had something that they were going for, and so we just went for it, and it did turn out to be different, and the tones are different, the styles are very different, and so it was quite interesting to have that happen.
So does that cover it? Yes, no?
I think
Yeah.
so. Thank you very much.
Continuing on here. Okay, deadlines. This is important. I live and die by deadlines. They need to be set in advance, because otherwise it just sort of meanders around the world and back again with nothing ever getting done. You have to be realistic. Sometimes one partner is crazy busy while it's the primary project for the other. So how are you going to make it fair for both? Like, the one that this is the primary project shouldn't have to sit around and wait for 6 months, but the one who's really busy can't put aside everything else because of it. So everything has to be sorted out ahead of time. The other thing has to be, what's the protocol when life intervenes? If there's illness, if there's family issues, if you've got other projects, If the world falls down around your ears, is the project going to be put on temporary hold? Does the other collaborator pick up the slack? Now, this has happened a lot with Anne and I, because of our lives. Now, even when we were doing the book that we just finished this last week, we had done some work on it, and then I started working with Linda and Sue. So I had 2 projects on the go, plus the other ones that I do on my own. And Anne didn't want to stop working, and I was having trouble juggling everything. So Anne very graciously just went ahead and fleshed out about 4 or 5 chapters while I worked on the other things. And then when we went back, we had something to work on. But she was very gracious about it. She had, it just worked out that way. I had just worked out with too many things all at once on my plate. But we've worked together a long, long time. There's been, I mean, I met her when I was 19, for heaven's sake. We've been writing together literally for decades. And so we know each other really well, and we know what happens with our families, and we know each other's work ethic. And so it's okay with us because we sort it out because, as I said, we've been friends for a long, long, long time. In a newer collaboration, it's kind of good to get that up front because otherwise everything can fall apart without even realizing it. Do you 2 have anything else to add with that?
No, I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay, next. Dirty little details. Linda, this is all yours.
Okay. So basically the first thing that we did was we got a business license. And then from there we could open a bank account. Oh no, then we decided on the LLC. So we got that all together. And with the help of Susan's daughter, who just worked her way through law school and did all of the nasty paperwork to form a corporation. And then we went on, got a bank account at our local credit union, and we haven't talked about taxes yet. The ISBNs are, I have a whole bunch of ISBNs. At one point there was a sale and I bought 100. And so I've basically made a subset of Metamorphosis Press, an imprint for that is Three Witches Books. And so we're publishing under Three Witches Books. So that worked out right. I'm not sure what author and address of record are. Because we're all 3 listed as authors. The address is, we're using my address because probably for local tax purposes, because there's no business tax where I live at this point for what we're doing. We didn't put our agreements in writing. We did agree that, basically once we publish something, once we publish the big anthology, then everybody's keeping their rights. We're not holding rights for any time in particular. If I wanted to go and publish my novella the next day, I could, no worries. And we haven't talked about, licensing or anything like that. I don't think any of us are, that's a really complicated thing. And I don't think any of us are ready to go that step. And we may never be ready to take that kind of step. Licensing is, wow, that would be that's like a three presentation discussion, and nobody in the co-op has that kind of experience. It's really complicated. So pretty much that's all the stuff that we did, the legal stuff that we did. We made a bunch of other decisions about deadlines and who's going to handle what particular aspect of our of our platform. We decided that I was going to put the website together, and Sue is going to go for Twitter and Instagram, and Susan was in charge of setting up the Facebook page. And we haven't gone any further out than that in terms of social media, but we're basically just all plugging away at our own stuff. And we decided that Susan's daughter, at this point, Susan's daughter is still making our covers. So she does the basic graphics, and I modify some of it for the website, and I find other graphics things for us to use for some of our promotion, because we've had a couple sales. And so pretty much we are just keeping on. Is there another slide, Susan?
Yeah. Mostly about working together. Do you want to stick with that? There's no other slide about the formal putting it together.
Yeah, no, let's move on.
Okay, one other thing, which I can send it to Matt to put on the website. One of the things which is often done, and I've done with Anne, even though we're great friends, is we do a legal partnership agreement, because you can get into stuff like, what if somebody dies? Who gets it? There's templates online. You can just pick them up. They're not hard to get unless you're doing something really fancy. But Anne especially likes to cross her T's and dot her I's, and I don't mind doing it either. So we've done that. And especially if you're working with people you don't know well, it's probably not a bad idea to look at it and at least discuss it, even if you don't sign a legal partnership. Okay, moving on. Okay, getting personal. Do your goals mesh? Like, why are you doing this? And they don't have to be the same, but they do need to be complementary. If one of you wants to be rich and famous, and this is a vehicle for launching your next series of erotica, and the other one wants to do it at the Sunday school, you kind of got a problem. So it's important to kind of know where you're heading and what you're expecting to have. Critiques. If you're going to critique each other, get the ground rules decided before the storm. You don't want to have people eating each other alive, which when you're in a joint project can sometimes happen because you feel like everything's at stake and all of these other things. Another thing, what are you going to do when someone wants to walk out and slam the door? They've had it, they don't want to do it, they've got other things on their plate. I mean, does the project die? Does somebody pick it up? That may never happen. One hopes it won't, but it's not a bad idea to figure out what you're going to do if you think that that's a possibility. Conflict resolution plans are a good thing. Like, if you really are kind of at loggerheads, what are you going to do about it other than walking out and slamming the door? Because creative work is personal, it's intense, and it pulls so much of who you are into it that it's not a bad idea to have an idea of what you're going to do if there is a problem. And that's like I was talking about with Anne and I. It's like, be aware of what hills you are prepared to die on. What matters to you more than anything else, and you will die on this hill rather than give in. And it's kind of good to have a sense of yourself as a writer. This is one of the reasons why I said it's important to know yourself as a writer and to be at a comparable place in your career with your collaborators, because you will have a better sense of where you're at. And you won't be looking at each other like, what are you talking about? Because you'll recognize what the issues are and why the issues are important. And then finally, which is not where you ever want to get, but if the conflict cannot be resolved, who owns the work? That has not happened to me, but it has happened to people I know. Particularly, it's interesting, Chloe, because we were talking about the romance writing. I know of, not so much recently, but a few years ago, people were working together a lot. And there was a lot of conflicts where one person would walk out and then who owned the work. And there was, when you get into higher end writers, there were some pretty nasty lawsuits. We're not quite at that level, but it does happen. So it doesn't hurt to have thought about it. If you're writing totally separate books like the three of us are doing, it's not a bad deal. If you're writing, I mean, it's not hard to figure out, but if you're writing collaboratively with someone where the two of you are working on the same piece of material, that does matter. Okay, that's as much as I know. Sue, Linda, do you want to throw anything else in, or do people have questions?
Okay. I just wanted to talk about a timeline a little bit, because you know, this is a lot to throw at people, but you have to realize that this all began like in February. I can name the date, February 29th, 2020, when we had a steering committee meeting, and we had actually a retreat. We had an all-day meeting, and we were trying to think of places the co-op could go, where we wanted to go for the following year. And this was pre-pandemic, so we hadn't even thought of that. And we were all sitting around and we thought, you know, what we want to do is we want to create groups of people in separate genres who want to work together and who are willing to, you know, like publish an anthology together and share marketing and share all the other things. And so the pandemic hit and everything fell apart, but we still had this clicking in the back of our mind. And so Sue and Susan and I got together later that spring and just sat and thought about it. And then we kind of decided that it would be fun to do this. And we each had assignments of what we needed to go investigate in order to make the logistics happen. But we settled on urban fantasy and witches for our topic for the first book. And so we went away and started writing. Some of us did, and some of us drug our feet. And then we met again in September and started ironing things out in terms of the logistics and who was going to do what. So it has taken nearly 2 years to get all this stuff done. This is a long-term thing, and this is we've put out 2 books during this time. We published one in May and then one in September, and we have another one planned for next spring sometime. I forget what the date is. So I just wanted to throw that out, and I know that Sue has a lot that she wants to talk about, and I think that's all that I have to say. So
Okay,
I'm passing it off.
Thank you. I really appreciate working with both of you because you've published so much and you really understand a lot of the ins and outs of making something like this happen, especially in practical terms. But I think what made things work for us is that we got to know each other while we were selling our books at the co-op booth, and we had the same kind of polite regard for each other. And we never tried to take another person's customer, or, you know, it was always a sense of the human being here matters more than selling a book. So when we got together, it's really been a pleasant, fun experience for me, because I always know that our meetings are going to be 2/3 personal and 1/3 business. And that's just fine. Because when we do get to the business part, we're real sensitive to what's going on with each other, and we work around each other's stuff, and we're able to get our books out there and help each other with our ideas for our stories. There's just a lot of trust. There's a lot of ethical cooperation in what we're doing, and so it works really well. And besides, they always bring chocolate when they come over to my house, so it's all good. That's kind of all I have to say.
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens is that we have everybody has strengths and weaknesses and skills, and where I'm lacking in skills, Sue and Susan have skills that I don't, and it's nice to have someone step up and you can go, oh, so that's how they do that, because you can watch it from the inside, because it's the situation and you know exactly what problem needs to be solved. And so when they solve a problem, I look at that and go, wow, so that's how they do it. Okay, well now I know how to do this, and so maybe I'm going to practice it. So there's a lot of give and take in this collaboration that's not just about getting a book out, but it's also about the promotion end of it, which I fail at a lot. And it's also about how they go about selling books in person too, which is wonderful. And yeah, I agree. The best way to get to know somebody is to sell books with them at a table. It's really eye-opening.
It is, because Sue was right, and I hadn't even been thinking about it, but we sell really well together in that, and there's a couple of other people in the co-op I sell well with too, but it's like what they're going to do, how they're going to act with customers, how they're going to act with you. There's not any subtle shoving you aside or anything, and like what Sue said, that there was a lot of courtesy and ethics involved. And I think that's like earlier when I was saying that you had to know the people and you had to trust them. That's how we built the trust. So the sales events help a lot, and there has to be some way to get to know them. Otherwise, it's hard. It's really hard. Anything else? Do people have questions?
Oh, I have one thing to add. I'm sorry. What I found too that worked really well for me is my vampire books are very adult. And so doing this collaboration allowed me to write some things where I had to tone down my language and tone down the sex and still tell a compelling story. So that was kind of a fun challenge, but I like doing it. And now if someone comes up to my table and they're looking at the books and they're saying, well, I'd like something for a 14-year-old, I can say, well, try the witch book, because my vampire books really aren't for that age. And so doing this collaboration has really opened up the market more for me.
One of the things that ended up with this was my witch. I ended up doing more of a mystery than typical fantasy, which was pretty interesting because I wasn't planning to do it, but I became very happy with learning that process, because it forced me out of my comfort zone and into something I'd never done before, and it's turned out to be a lot of fun, and I wouldn't have done it without these two. So I really appreciate that.
Exactly. I have a 5 novella series that is I put each one in the book so far that I've written, but it's like a 5 novella series plan that would not have happened without this collaboration. And it's and I'm enjoying writing it, and I've been struggling with writing during the pandemic in general, but this one is just a delight to go to.
Yeah, that's where having something like this also helps with writer's block, because if somebody's waiting for it, you keep pushing yourself. And as I said earlier, you do get ideas from each other. I got into stuff I had no idea I would get into, and it's been fun. I've learned a lot.
Is there anything that you guys have?
Trouble.
Yeah, cool. Is there anything that you guys have learned over the past, few months, year or so since you've been doing this that you're going to change going forward within your group?
I don't know.
Well, I think we're going to write more than 3 books together.
Yeah, so far we're thinking about 5. And I don't know. I mean, when I started out, the concept that I had was that, okay, we're going to do an anthology on witches, and then maybe we'll do something else for the second one, and something else for the third one, and the fourth one, and then we're still stuck on witches. So I think that if some of us, I'm talking about me here, could be more productive, we could do a whole lot more. We could be putting out a whole lot more books, but yeah, life keeps getting in the way at this point. But that was one thing that surprised me, that I would have that much to say about witches and without wanting to move on to something else.
Yeah, I found that I ended up, I never thought of writing about a witch. I've never been much interested in witches. And, but I was able to combine it with gardening, which is what I really like a lot. So my witch became a green witch, and she ended up living in a deconsecrated church in New York. So I started pulling stuff, like my daughter went to university in downtown New York for 6 years, and I used to go visit her there. So that I've ended up pulling a lot of that stuff into the story, which is not something I ever thought I would use. But it's kind of nice. It's there's a lot of freedom to it that I didn't expect, and I particularly like it because I was getting really tired of what I was doing. So I was looking for kind of new ways of expressing myself. So this forced me into something else. It was good.
Well, great. Does anybody have any additional questions for our group here today? You can come off mute if you'd like. I see Roland is typing something. No, something about anthologies. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for your time and sharing your experience here. I think it'd help a lot of people here who might be considering this.
I highly recommend it. If you want to do it, it's really a fun thing to do if you don't take it too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't want to look at this as this is going to make or break my career. This is a piece of a career, but it's a fun piece. So.
Yeah, it seems like it was very fulfilling and very engaging experience. The accountability must be a nice thing too.
Yeah, pretty much this kept me writing throughout the pandemic, and I'm not writing a ton of stuff, but I am, chugging away, and I'm excited. I'm excited about what I'm writing. So that's a huge piece, and the pandemic has been, kind of a struggle to write for me.
Mm-hmm. No, understandable. Well, great. Thank you guys so much. What I'll do here is I'll stop the recording and we'll make sure to put this on YouTube. So I put a link in the chat. If you want to scroll up, you'll see the link to our YouTube channel. So it'll be there probably within the hour, and you get to re-listen, rewatch if you missed anything today. I greatly